my mother's never going to change. And I'm going to have to create a new reality that doesn't include her. Welcome to the Black Mother Wound podcast, where we center the stories of Black women as we heal from the painful relationships with our mothers. Welcome to the Black Mother Wound podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Arnice. What's up, y'all? So, someone asked me a question, and I think that if she has it, a lot of us have it. And it is around, how do we deal with grieving the loss of the mother that we'll never have? It's one of these questions where there is no perfect answer, because the experience of grief is so incredibly personal to everyone. And a part of how we're made up, us Black girls with this mother wound, is we want to find the right way to do things. And in healing your mother wound, there is no one right way. The only right thing that you're going to have to start doing is trusting yourself and putting yourself first and feeling your feelings. That's the foundation of it all. When we think about healing in any way, but specifically when we're talking about letting go of this idealized version of our mother, there is no one way to do it. There is no fixed time on grief. Like, well, if I do that for 90 days, then I'll be over and I can go back to my life. No, ma'am. That's not what this is. I can't tell you how long it is going to last. The grief, the ache. This is your mother, right? But I can say the grieving process is like a birthing ground for something else to come. So I want you to hold on to that as we enter into this conversation, that grief creates a birthplace for something. And you will need to hold on to that when you're in that grieving process. And even if you are looking for it for the rest of your life, it's worth looking for, because you will find other gems along the way. So what does grieving the mother that you'll never have look like? It is the hardest pill you're ever going to swallow. It is the acceptance that I was treated poorly. I was neglected. I was abused. Someone didn't value me in the way they should have. It means that realizing that someone had a responsibility to me and they did not do right by me. They were irresponsible with me, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They were irresponsible with me. They had an obligation to care for me in a way that I knew my intrinsic value and that I felt safe. And they didn't do that, and they're never going to do it. All of those things are never going to happen at the hands of this person. That realization hurts, because it sends us into this, well, who am I then? Who am I to have a mother that doesn't love me in a way that I need to be loved? And the first place we go is that I must be broken. But grieving the idealized mother, if we do it in a healthy way, we don't go to, I must be broken, because that's a shame response. We go to, it is about her, it's not about me. And that takes time. So the grief is just the letting go. It is the idea that you have thought about, that you have wanted, that you have worked on. There's so many things that you have done in your life for the approval, the acceptance of your mother, hoping you would somehow get the light to turn on inside of her. And now that that's not there, you're going to have to go through sadness, anger, confusion, frustration, sorrow. That is what the process looks like. When me and my mother haven't spoken for almost 10 years now. And in the beginning, I had these feelings of shame, like I spoke about just a few minutes ago. How could I be this person that doesn't have a mother who loves her? Like, how am I even going to have conversations with people when Mother's Day comes up or things happen or the topic of moms come up in relationships and what's happening? What are you doing on Mother's Day? All that kind of stuff. So grieving for me was grieving that loss, but it meant supporting myself. That's what it meant. If I'm the one who experienced a loss, so if you had a friend and they experienced a great loss, how would you show up for them? You would ask them what they need. If they're crying, if they're angry, if they want to vent, you're there to listen. They might not want to cook. You bring them some food. You want to make them laugh. Sometimes you might want to distract them from that so they can have a moment of peace. That's what grieving was for me, because I was already in the healing work, but really understanding, oh, my mother's never going to change. And I'm going to have to create a new reality that doesn't include her, because I've come to know I cannot have that behavior in my life. So grieving means showing up for yourself. It meant me laying in bed a lot, alone. And you know what? And I don't know if I was necessarily like crying or boo-hooing, but it was just like a loss. It was like I was in a daze. Like I really couldn't believe it. But I also say this, grieving the loss of the idealized mother also takes a lot of pressure off of you. I think that was a big thing. And I don't talk about that a lot because I kind of feel bad. Like people already say I'm mean, right? And I'm heartless and cold-blooded and all these kinds of things. That's just, y'all already know how that goes. So, but it does make me kind of like not talk about that part, because it's like, but don't you love your mother? I do love my mother, but it was so much work trying to get her to love me the way I needed to be loved, to get her to see me, accept me, support me. It was so much work trying to get her to change. And when I stopped, I had all this time for myself. I could finally put that focus on me. Finally, that's when I really realized, like, oh shit, I have been doing all these things for the wrong reasons. That's why my life is so chaotic, because I'm trying to appease to her and appeal to her. You have this like wandering. It's almost like you become an orphan, but with becoming an orphan, there can also be freedom. Y'all know Jada Pinkett Smith and her mom, right? They have the red table. So I think it was their very first red table talk. They were talking about, you know, the relationship between mothers and daughters. And I think Willow was on. And her mom was talking about how she still feels so much guilt because she was on crack. I think she was an alcoholic, and she wasn't there for Jada when she was young. And Jada was like, I need you to understand that I forgive you. That is not something that I look at as an issue between us or in my life, right? And the mother was like, well, I just, I should have been there, and it still haunts me, and I'm still trying to make up for it. And what Jada said, I so related to. She said, because you were off doing your thing, I did not have to worry about you being in my way of living my dreams. I did not ever have someone say, you can't do it. You're not good enough. You need to think smaller. Who are you to want to go to New York or LA or be on Broadway or be an actress? Like, she didn't have that encumbrance. And she was like, so that in a way was a real gift to me, because I was allowed to believe in myself. And I was like, damn, that's deep. That's a real deep way to look at it, right? We look at the role of our mother as someone who has to provide everything to us, when actually the role of the mother is to give us freedom so we can begin to give all of the things we need to ourselves and allow us the authority and the autonomy to make mistakes, to learn, to get it right, to come back and still be accepted as we go through this growing process. So for me, I was very aware that I had a certain level of freedom now that my mother was not in my life, and I could make different decisions. I could believe in myself in different ways. I didn't have to have conversations where I didn't tell her about good things that were happening to me, because when I would do that, she would dismantle them and then she would make it all about herself. I didn't have to worry about doing that anymore. And that was a huge relief for me. So I think perspective goes a long way. And the grieving process, I will say, if you're having a hard time, then focus on what people who have experienced the death of a loved one, that grieving process. And there are stages to grief and allowing yourself to go through those. But I don't want you to look at yourself as a victim. The loss isn't the actual loss because you never had it. It is letting the dream die. But like I said, with grief, something else can be reborn. And all of the things that you dreamed that you wanted from your mother, you can give those things to yourself. And then from there, people will gravitate toward you, and you can build a community of people who love you, value you, nurture you, people who you can trust, people who trust you, people who see the best in you. This is what is possible through the healing process, right? Now, thank you for watching this episode of The Black Mother Wound. I'll let you get back to it in less than 60 seconds. If you're listening to this show, then you've been struggling with the effects of the painful relationship with your mother. This is why I created Resolve. It is a 6-week group healing program for Black women who are finally ready to heal their mother wound, but need support, guidance, and a safe community to do it in. Whether you're struggling to accept your mother for who she is, trying to make peace with the past, or learning how to build a loving relationship with yourself, Resolve is the answer. Imagine making decisions that are best for you without feeling guilty. What if you could finally trust and believe in yourself and begin living your best life on your own terms? These are just a couple of the ways Resolve can change your life for the better. If you're ready to start thriving in your life now, click the link below and sign up to get notified when the class opens in August. We really are all in this together. How does forgiveness play into grieving the mother that we'll never have? If you all have listened, I'm not big on forgiveness. And I know that sounds hard. And it doesn't mean I'm big on holding a grudge. But so often, the forgiveness that y'all are talking about forgiving your mother, is really about her focus. It's not about a focus we have on ourselves. It's about how do we let go of it and still maintain some relationship with her. Forgiveness in its truest form is knowing that something could have never been any different and that what we believed was never true. So we hoodwinked ourselves. We manipulated ourselves into believing something. If it's true forgiveness, it has nothing to do with the other person. And it's about really coming to terms with knowing it never could have been any other way but this. And when you know something could never be another way, you're free. There's no more suffering, because all of your suffering in life comes from you wanting something to be different than what it is, because you think your happiness is in what someone else does, who someone else is, what someone else gives you. You're always going to be in suffering if you're dependent. That's conditional. But true forgiveness is like, it always was this way. And I'm so much lighter. I'm so much freer. It's so much more peaceful to know that this is true, because when you lie to yourself a long time, it kind of makes you feel like you're crazy, and you really are, because you're lying to yourself over and over again. And your true self is like, girl, what are you doing? That doesn't even make any sense. And when you lie to yourself, you become a manipulator to yourself and to others. So that's really the only role that forgiveness plays in letting go of that idea, because that's your idea of who she should be. That's not her idea of who she is. Now, she might think that she's this wonderful mother and she did everything right, but that's still not the mother that you dreamed of. The mother that you dreamed of, that figment of your imagination. And no one really owes you to give you what your imagination sees. That is not the job of a mother, to become who you think she should be. Because if you think that's true, then it's okay for you to be who she thinks you should be. That standard, nobody can play that game. And it's never, ever going to work for you. So how has accepting my mother's limitations helped me in my own healing process? It's freed me because guess what? She's human. We're all human. I don't have a fantasy version of her. And how dare I? How dare I say you should be this way if you're my mother? Compared to who? Claire Huxtable? Compared to who? Somebody I've compared down the street, somebody I've seen on social media. Why is that? To me, that is also very childish. But I understand you want it because you're somewhere pretending to be something you're not for someone. And you think that's called being a good friend, a good girlfriend, a good wife. Maybe you're a mother. And so you pretend to be this ideal thing that, oh, if I have all of this, then they will hold me in high regard and everything will work out wonderfully and everyone will love me and da 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 da. So you think, well, why isn't she doing that? Well, you fucking up by doing it yourself. Your healing process when it comes to your mother wound is really about reshaping your entire identity, how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you move in the world, how you engage with people. That grieving process of accepting who she is the ultimate freedom because guess what? Now you get to accept who you are. You get to be yourself as well. That's the trick to this. This is why I keep telling y'all, healing your mother wound has nothing to do with the relationship with your mother. It has to do with the relationship you have with yourself. And you're somewhere lying about who you are. You're somewhere trying to create some idealized, inhuman version of yourself so you can get everything you want in life. That's called lying and manipulation, okay? And it's childish. And I know it's what we did when we were young for our survival, but that's not where you are right now. So these antics that you're playing aren't going to get you anywhere. So when you can grieve the mother you've never had, you can also grieve the person you've pretended to be. You can let them go. And who is born out of that is the real you. That's what I keep wanting you all to get focused on. Some of these questions, I know they're helpful. I know I got to get it out, but I don't want you to focus so much on the relationship with your mother because you never can control that. And your healing, your emotional redemption is not going to come from the relationship with your mother. It's going to come from building a healthy and loving relationship with yourself. Period. Point blank. There is no other way. There's no way around it. And there's nothing that can trump it. And there's no trade that you can make. And there's no strategy or like, well, maybe I'll give a little and she give a little and maybe I'm trying. None of that. It is an all or nothing game. And whoever wants to come with you, they come with you, right? That's what I need you to really be understanding, okay? What advice would I give to people who are struggling with this type of grief? If you're struggling with the grief, it's because you have not fully accepted that she is not the mother you want to have. You haven't accepted it. Like you still think it's unfair that she's not who you want her to be. So you're not really in the grief yet because you're in resistance. Grief is, I have let it go and here I am. And the only thing I can say, if you are in the grief of it, you have really accepted it. And you are sad, you're going to have to let yourself be sad. You're going to have to go through the stages of grief. You're going to have to show up for yourself. That's why this work is so important because there is so much grief. There is so much loss. There is so much loneliness. But you have to learn how to show up for yourself. If grief hits you in the middle of the day and let's say you don't work from home. You're just overwhelmed. You're angry. You're frustrated. You're sad. How do you show up for yourself? You got to go out to the car for 15 minutes, take your unofficial, air quote, smoke break, and be there for yourself. Maybe you have to scream. Maybe you have to cry, but you be there for yourself. You build a support system around you. You build a community. You let people know, hey, and this is not for everybody, but there should be one or two people in your life, even if it's a therapist. But it would be great if it's a therapist and a real trusted friend where you can let them know, I'm going through some things with my mother. Is it okay sometimes if I call and just like get some stuff off my chest? Or is it okay if we do some things so I can distract myself from this whole painful process? So maybe we go to the park, we have a picnic, we go out to eat, we watch a movie, we do something fun, we take a hike. That's how you show up for yourself. That is what reparenting is. To really move through the grieving process of something so personal, you're going to have to become your caregiver because you're the person who is left. Okay. And you're going to have to feel all of your feelings. You're going to have to. And that takes autonomy. You're going to have to give yourself permission to feel it for as long as you want without judging yourself. Because just because you're not going to get the mother you always dreamed of, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're lost and there's no hope and nobody's ever going to be there for me. Like if my mother never loved me, who will love me? I'm not trying to make light of it, but I do want you to understand that none of that is true. There are so many people waiting to love you, to believe in you, to nurture you, to lift you up, to encourage you. There are people who you can trust. There are people who see the real you, but you're going to have to make yourself recognizable to them. And you do that by being good to yourself, holding yourself in high regard, respecting yourself, honoring yourself. How do you do that? When you're sleepy, you sleep. When you're thirsty, you drink something. When you're hungry, you eat. You would be amazed at how your mind and body and emotions will respond if you would just attend to yourself in those ways. If you say, I'm going to drink water instead of drinking a soda. I'm going to make myself something healthy to eat instead of going through the Wendy's drive-through, because you really are punishing yourself going through that drive-through. You know what? I'm worth the hour that it's going to take to go get the groceries, come home, put them away, cook it, make myself a wonderful meal. I'm worth that. That's how you deal with the grief. You show up for yourself. There's no way to have grief without struggle, because you don't want to feel what you're feeling and it makes you feel so powerless. The only thing you can do is submit to it and create a loving, caring environment around yourself, with yourself. That's how you do it. And you just keep moving. And then you realize there's something being born here. The real me, the authentic me. I get to be myself. To me, that's more important than anything. I don't know about y'all, but getting to be myself, it trumps any relationship with anybody, including my mother. Because what is the benefit of someone if I can't be me? If they can't see me, if I'm not good enough the way I am, just to say that I can tell people that me and my mother hang out every weekend, that's not worth it to me. Not for her, not for anybody. And if you're doing it with your mother, then you're going to do it with other people. You're going to sacrifice yourself for other people, but that's a whole nother episode. I'm not going to get into that. So grieving the mother you've never had is critical in the healing process. If you are trying to still get her to change, you are doing yourself more harm than good. You are not actually doing any healing work if you are trying to get through to your mother. If you are still imagining or trying to cajole, manipulate to get what you need from her, you're not actually healing. But when you're ready to grieve that loss, there is a new life waiting for you on the other side. That's what I need you to understand. But you just got to stay in it. You got to stay connected. You got to stay a part of this community. You got to love on yourself. You have to learn new skills, because on the other side is more love. And I'm not saying that all of those things replace your mother. There still may be sadness. You still might think about, wow, it would be nice to talk to her about this. It would have been nice to, you see something. Like sometimes I'll see something at a grocery store or cook something, and I'd be like, oh, she would have loved this. But instead of feeling sad, it's almost like it brings up a happy memory for me. Like, you know what? There were times where we laughed. And I have those things. I get to keep them. I don't need to recreate them and keep having them. What I had, it actually was good enough because it's all I had. And I'm okay with that. That's what grief has allowed me to do, going through that process, right? That's what healing does. So that's all I got for y'all today. Think about this. Be easy with yourself. Be honest with yourself. This is not easy work. We are really all in this together. Thank you for being here. I love you dearly. Please, if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy this episode in this podcast, comment. Please leave a comment. Please rate the podcast. It goes a long way. If you are just listening to the audio, head over to YouTube, Jennifer Arnice, because guess what? This is now also a video podcast and you can see me and hear me. I love it. So subscribe, comment, like, and share over there as well. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for listening to the Black Mother Wound podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and make sure you comment, subscribe, and rate the show. You can keep the conversation going over on IG at Black Mother Wound and click the link in the show notes to download the free Mother Wound Healing Guide. See you next week.